Hey Internet, it's me. I'm back, and it's been, I don't know, forever? A minute? Something? Yeah. I watched the new Guardians of the Galaxy, as the title of this video probably gave away. And I wanted to talk about it. Now, first, overall impression, no spoilers. This is one of the better Marvel movies I've seen in quite a while. Probably my favorite Guardians movie. And honestly, just a really, really good film. So if you're on the fence at all, go watch it. And if you're not like the biggest fan or you haven't kept up or whatever, go watch it anyway. Like it's so really good. And now I'll get into spoiler territory and talk more. First things first, the movie does reference events and things from not just the previous two movies, but also the holiday special. So if for some reason you hadn't seen the holiday special, you should watch that before going in. And to illustrate that point right away, Cosmo is in the movie a bunch. Mostly we see Cosmo playing off Kraglin, and honestly, I love their interactions. I think both characters are really fun and really funny. I'm kind of disappointed that Kraglin's become a main character and Cosmo has just become a character at all, and they're both so fun and endearing, and now Guardians is coming to an end. And I find that very disappointing because I loved their interactions. The running joke with the bad dog thing was just hilarious. I didn't feel like it was overdone. It was referenced multiple times, but it didn't feel bad at all. And if you have a dog, them getting hung up on something and just acting obsessive like that also seems kind of in character. So yeah, I really loved their interactions and just that running joke with them. That was very well done. Also, another thing that I really liked was the interactions between Star-Lord and Gamora. Because obviously the Gamora here is not the same one we had in the previous movies. This is the Gamora that ended up in our universe post-Endgame. She has no relation to these characters, really. She has no history with them, aside from Nebula. But even then, Nebula had grown several years since the last interaction that Gamora thinks they had. So she's basically an outsider of the whole thing. And while Star-Lord is still in love with her and still hung up on her, she doesn't feel the same because she doesn't have that backstory with him. And I love that this movie doesn't go the terrible cliche route of just making her fit into his image of her and making the dude's desire more important than hers. In the end, basically, she just does her own thing and he accepts that she's not the person he remembers or that he wants her to be, and she's never going to be that person because she literally isn't. And I love that the movie finds a way to make him accept that and make that be their ending, and they're both at a place where that's okay. You know, she learns to enjoy the person that he is, but in her own terms and in her own way, and he, in turn, realizes that, hey, you're not the Gamora I lost, you're not this person I loved and, spent this time with, but the person that you are is also a good person, and I'm glad to know you. I really enjoyed that they went that route and just gave those good interactions and depth to these characters instead of just making them like a one-note thing. It was really well done. I enjoyed it. One of my favorite parts of the movies, also, new topic now, and I swear to God I'm not going to bring up the fact that I'm an actor in every video I make, but I'm going to bring it up now. I spent the last weekend on a film set. And I was acting and also assistant director, so I had to pay a lot of attention to everything that was going on, cinematography-wise, and the lighting, keeping the crew under control, and of course doing my character and portraying things, so there was a lot to do. And from doing things like that, I appreciate more a lot of the stuff that goes into films, not just like, oh, I'm enjoying watching this, but like, oh, this cinematography is really well done, or this choreography is really impressive, or the way this music matches not only the tone of the scene, but things happening on screen match individual beats in the song. Like stuff like that sticks out more. And so one thing that I absolutely loved in this movie, there is a hallway fight scene that I really hope becomes iconic. I hope to have people reference and mention this all the time because it was genuinely incredible. It was set to No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and there were moments where like some of the individual impacts from like someone being punched or thrown against a wall were hitting on the bass beats of the song. But also this whole fight scene was a single take, single cut scene with the camera panning back and forth through this hallway, watching all this action with all these different characters fighting at the same time. And granted, a lot of these characters are CG, so there's only half as many people on set. That's not true. There's stand-ins wearing green suits. So no, they had a dozen or so people all choreographed to do this one singular fight, all moving and fighting and doing their thing at once at the same time. And honestly, it was damned impressive. That scene stood out to me immediately. Like as I was watching, like, oh, this is something special. And it really, really was. All the action was great. Every character got a moment to shine in there to show off their own unique, fighting style and their own unique character and just what they brought to the table in terms of action. But the one that I really loved the most was with Nebula, who of course is the cyborg and has had all the cybernetic enhancements to her body, whether she wanted to or not. And the way that really they played that up and that stuck out is that one character hit her hard enough to break her neck, and as that happened, her neck rolled to the side and she spun her head around to view the next target and then shoot him behind her back, and then turned and got the guy that originally snapped her neck, all while her limbs weren't 100% jointed. And it just, the way she flowed from that impact to then carry out her next move, it was so smooth and so well done that it took this scene that was already a 10 out of 10 scene and just made it an 11 out of 10. Like, really, everything about that scene I fell in love with. It was incredible. I will watch the movie again. Well, I'm going to watch it again for a lot of reasons, but that scene will be one of the ones that I look forward to the most. But speaking of good action scenes, another thing that I really liked, and it was a minor scene, but the character Warpig was fairly menacing, and the first time the character is confronted, they just immediately have this rocket and just do this big powerful thing, and they're shown to be somewhat strong, and you think that they might be a formidable foe, and then Adam Warlock warns this character basically hey, fuck off and leave me alone. And Warpig goes to move against him, and as quick as you could snap a finger, he grabs her head, snaps her neck, and then rips her head and spine off her body. And it's just incredible and brutal and visceral, and I don't know, it was very satisfying. And that kind of brings me to another point, that this whole movie feels different than a lot of other Marvel movies. It felt more adult. They weren't, there was still humor, and there was still some of the same colorful things. It's still set in the same universe as everything else, but it just felt more mature than the other movies. I don't know if it was because of the action and the viscera, or the fact that they dropped an F-bomb at one point, or I don't know if there's any one particular thing that made it feel that way for me. It was just, this movie stuck out to me as just a standalone kind of thing in the MCU. And I have more thoughts on that, but I'll save those to the end, because I want to talk more about this movie specifically. The last thing that I really liked, and it's another interaction type thing, is Manus and Drax. They're still kind of the comic relief characters, but they've grown to be more than that. Manus, before kind of just went along. She was a follower, and she didn't do a lot of thinking for herself. She kind of just did what people told her to do, and she was just there to help support the team, and then just to help make everybody laugh. But we got a little bit of it in the holiday special, and a lot more of it in this movie, where she's willing to shut down other characters, most specifically Drax, and kind of defend herself and stand on her own and just, try to prove that she's a powerful member of the team too. Like, she has things to contribute. She's not just support. Like, she can fight and she can help control people with the powers that she has, and she can be valuable to the team. And every time she shuts down Drax, you kind of see that more and more. And then she mentions multiple times that she feels like people, ignore her, or take advantage of her, or diminish her. And so at the end of the movie, when she decides to go off on her own and make a name for herself and not be in the shadow of any team or person anymore, it feels like a good growth moment, and it definitely feels earned for this character. Like, she has started to show what she can do, and so as a viewer, you agree that, hey, she should go on her own, and she should continue being this powerful person that she is. So I really liked that moment. But I'll stop gushing for a second to mention some things that I didn't like, because of course no movie's perfect except for Spirited Away. So, every movie's going to have something you don't like. And here, there were really two things that stuck out. One, and it's kind of surprising, is the soundtrack. James Gunn always has just these great, weird, eclectic kind of soundtracks, picking, music that you wouldn't necessarily expect and putting it in the movie or TV show or whatever in a way that just feels weird but appropriate. The first Guardians of the Galaxy, a lot of the songs, when they came in, they weren't songs that you expect. They were very, they were from an older generation, and you just wouldn't expect them to be playing in the background of a movie at the time that movie was made. But they all fit, and they just made sense, and it kind of tied into the story too, with it being a cassette he got from his mom and all that, and it worked. But in this one, I don't know, a lot of the songs just didn't hit for me, really. There were one or two that actually played in with the movie, like the one where the camera's panning up over Star-Lord, standing on, the observation deck and their ship there, and it's talking about staring into space, and he is staring into space. And it also has a romantic undertone. He's pining for Gamora at that moment. So that one was very fitting, and it worked. And then, like I mentioned, No Sleep to Brooklyn in the big fight scene. There were things that were timed with the song, so people hit on the beat of the song, and that worked. But a lot of the other songs in the movie just, I don't know, they didn't really work for me. It's not that they're bad songs. They didn't do anything to elevate the scene. So it just felt weird for me. And I think I've just grown to expect a lot from James Gunn with his song choices and his soundtracks. So I just thought it was weird here. And then the other thing that I really didn't like was Adam Warlock. When they first showed him in the beginning, he's just seen as very powerful. And, this fight scene he has, he's very easily just beating the crap out of the Guardians. They pose almost no threat to him. Even Drax, who is supposed to be, this very powerful being in the MCU, he's Drax the Destroyer. He's not much of a threat. Warlock, I'm not going to say struggles with him, but he maybe tolerates the fight for a bit longer than he does the other characters. But he still ends up besting him without too much challenge. So you expect him to be a big antagonist or a big, powerful force in the movie, but he's really not. After that scene, aside from when he snaps Warpig's neck, I don't know, he doesn't feel super powerful. He keeps just getting knocked aside or just in some way deterred or shut down or whatever. And then they keep kind of playing him off mentally as just a bit of a clown, and I don't know, they really diminished the character, and it was honestly kind of disappointing. I really wanted to see more of him being strong and powerful and being more of a challenge for the Guardians, and he wasn't. But I guess the only thing left to talk about now is the elephant in the room, and that's Rocket. Rocket has always been my favorite character in the Guardians movies anyway. I also loved him in the comics. I really liked his backstory. I liked his character. I don't know, I really like Rocket. So of course, going into this movie with everything that James Gunn had said, and even kind of the vibe that the trailers gave you, I was worried they were going to kill Rocket. And again, spoiler alert, as if I haven't already spoiled a million things in this video, they did not kill Rocket, but it was so much worse. Dear God. Okay, so when they killed Lila while she was in his arms, and then a minute later killed Floor while he was literally begging for Rocket and Teefs and him to just leave, or her, I think Floor's a girl, not a guy, but just, oh my God, that whole scene was gutting. Like, I was in that theater absolutely crying, 100%. And if I wasn't in a theater surrounded other people, it would have been like ugly cry, like bawling. Like, that scene was just, it was fucking powerful, man. Like, you felt the anguish and despair that Rocket felt. To the point where, like, when he came back to life, you could tell that he was almost disappointed. Like, why? Why would you bring me back? Why do I have to do more of this? I don't even want to. And it was just, it hit hard. Like, that's the most real emotion I've felt in a Marvel movie. Like, the MCU doesn't do great with emotional moments. They're really quick to show an emotion, but then immediately jump in with some comedy to undercut it and move on from it, because God forbid you let your audience feel anything, then they might actually enjoy themselves. This did not do that. These scenes 100% let you feel things. You spend all these flashbacks getting attached to, Rocket's friends, and, just getting to know their humor and finding them endearing and kind of wanting to cheer for them, even though you know that in the future, Rocket does not have these people in his life and does not talk about them, so clearly something bad happens, but then when you see it happen and it's on screen in front of you, it just feels awful. And honestly, that's a good thing. Like, I don't like feeling awful, and I love those characters and would have absolutely loved to see way more of them. But the fact that the movie just went for that and just made you feel those things and made you lose these characters that you've just gotten attached to, and then made you experience how awful basically everything in life has been for Rocket, like, that was powerful, and that makes this a really good movie. And this brings me back to my earlier point, is that this felt like something different and new for Marvel. And I'm really disappointed that we're not going to get more of this. Because Black Panther felt like a very world-building movie. You got a little more of Wakanda, and you got a whole lot of Namor's land, and it just felt like it was kind of fleshing things out. It wasn't trying to be just another MCU entry. It was building something. It was setting the scene a little more. It was getting to know more about not just the characters, but where they came from and like what their traditions and history are. And it felt new and interesting, and I really enjoyed that. And then Ant-Man came out, and for some reason it's critically panned and nobody liked it. I thought it was great. I thought that was another one that it felt like it was trying something new. The world that they went to, it felt different, and a lot of the characters were kind of interesting. I liked, like, the various aliens that they introduced there, the guy that wanted the holes, and the telepath who, just basically abhorred people because of the terrible things they keep thinking that he's forced to hear. I liked a lot of the stuff they did in that movie. I think they could have went for it a little more with the ending and not given him the happy ending and, hey, everything's great. They could have left him in the quantum realm. But I liked what they did, and then, of course, it set up Kang, which we might lose as a character now, but at the time, that was cool, because he's supposed to be the new big baddie, and finally we're seeing him, and he was a big baddie. He was indiscriminately killing people because he didn't care and just wanted to conquer. And the only reason he was bested was because the ants took over. Anyway, my point is, Marvel was trying new things, and it kind of felt good. We'd also gotten Werewolf by Night, which was something completely different. And even Miss Marvel, whether it was your favorite thing or not, it was different. It was like a preteen dramedy. We were doing different things. We were branching out. It was interesting. The MCU was going in multiple different directions. You weren't getting 100 carbon copies of Iron Man, where it was Marvel quip after Marvel quip and someone that always has a witty retort, and it ends with a CGI battle between two evenly matched characters with the exact same powers. That was every movie up to that point, and finally things were starting to change in Phase 4 and Phase 5. I was excited about that. I wanted more of that, but the critics kept shitting on these movies to the point where Marvel said, hey, we're going to take a step back from all the sequels and maybe rethink how we do things, or we're going to change our schedule, and it's just so disappointing because it means they're going to go back to the same versus same and the formulaic nonsense that apparently idiots enjoy because they can't think creatively or experience new things. But that just really sucks because from a filmmaking standpoint, that is just a creatively bankrupt approach. We're not getting anything new. That's why Guardians of the Galaxy and pretty much everything James Gunn does is always so great and so unique, is that he takes characters or stories that you're not necessarily familiar with or that you're not expecting, and he finds a way to make them interesting. You know, before this, Guardians of the Galaxy were relatively unknown. Not a lot of people read those comics. People didn't know who Rocket and Groot were. You know, Rocket originally met Lila battling in like this giant toy company in space, which would have been even more on the nose for parodying Disney, which I'm pretty sure the villain in this movie was. And Groot, you know, is like imbued with the life force of a planet, and it's this whole thing, and they're interesting characters, but they're not ones that anybody knew. And then he made them so interesting and endearing in these movies that suddenly they're in the mainstream. And he did the same with Suicide Squad. He didn't stick to the same DC villains that you're used to. He brought in ones that you necessarily wouldn't know, but he put them in front of you in a way that they're entertaining and endearing and you enjoy them and want to know more about them. Same for Peacemaker, and just, I don't know, the man knows how to take the obscure and make it not only relevant but interesting. And we could use a lot more of that in Marvel. You know, they have a lot of interesting characters. I always said DC has better villains, but Marvel has better heroes, and I mean that. But they need to lean on them more, and they need to let them do their own thing. You know, Nico from The Runaways would be really fun, now that I know what that character is because of Marvel's Midnight Suns. Or Scream from Spider-Man/Venom here would be a really fun character to explore if you go all the way back to when she was just Andy Benton and had her Hellmark and all the things she had to deal with, and then she got the symbiote, and there's a lot of cool directions they could go with, a lot of really cool characters and interesting stories they could tell, or they could even ignore the comics and just write new stories, or even create a new character. You know, bring in the Hunter from Midnight Suns and just play with that for a while. Or bring in Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl, but then have the MCU react to just this giant red dinosaur rampaging in New York. Ignore the stories from the comics and instead show us all the current heroes that we have in New York in the MCU trying to grapple with this. You know, now that you've introduced Daredevil, what the hell is he going to do against a Tyrannosaurus? There's some really interesting stuff they could do, and they just refuse to do it, and that's so disappointing to me because I love these comics and would love to see them done even better than they are now. But all of that aside, back to my original point, Guardians was amazing. The action and the choreography were incredible. The cinematography was great. The special effects in first for the last couple years of Marvel were top tier. All the CGI and the creature design and the aliens, the prosthetics, they all looked great. Apparently, the MCU is kind of going the direction of the animated branch of Disney and just trying to appeal to furries. If you saw the movie, you obviously know what I mean with the planet of fursona people. So that was an interesting take, but hey, whatever floats your boat. Yeah, it was just, everything about it was great. I love it. It's a really good movie. You should watch it too. And that's just going to where I'm at, or however those words should have come out of my mouth. I'm going to stop before I ramble more and forget how to talk entirely. So, thanks for watching, and I swear to God, at some point, I might make another video about video games. I do still play them, it's just hard to talk about them somehow. So, yeah, I'll see you later.